Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm John Bernard. This is Nick. We are the Kairouz Brothers, giving you the news around the world in combat sports. Nick, eventful fight week. There's been some bangers on this week. I mean, last week we had Sean Brady and we had Leon Edwards. I was kind of surprised by the result and how easy it was. This week we got Steve Erceg versus Moreno. A lot of things coming up.
Well, look, let's go straight into UFC London because there were reports that this was the biggest and the highest grossing fight night of all time. So they sold out 18,000 seats in London, which was pretty amazing for
O2
a fight
Arena,
night.
yeah.
But I think the card as a whole, pretty disappointing.
Look, even Tom Aspinall said he was in the building and he just said the atmosphere wasn't great. There was a lot of decisions, wasn't a lot of action. And at the end of the day, that's not on the crowd. It's probably on the fighters. It's on the personalities.
Well, it wasn't at 5 a.m., so the crowd had no excuse not to be rowdy,
Yeah.
not to be the usual English, rowdy lads. But I saw footage of people leaving the main event mid-fight. Like, what?
Yeah.
If you spent, I don't know how many hundreds
People
of
are
thousands
saying
of
up
dollars.
to thousands of dollars for tickets, and that's why it's the highest grossing. You got inflation, and the UFC is charging an arm and a leg to get into the arena.
With that being the case, how do you walk out during the main event? Like, you stayed the whole fight, you stayed the whole night, and then you walk out during the biggest part of the event, the main event. Why would you walk out for? Like, even if it sucks, what if Leon Edwards pulled out a head kick, headshot dead again? You just missed it. You spent thousands of dollars. You just missed the biggest.
It's very
biggest
true.
kick in
It's not like
history.
he couldn't have done it before. If someone gives him a G up speech in the corner, he comes out.
That's what I'm
head
saying, like,
kicks, gets a win in the last round.
That's stupidity.
But what did you think of the card overall? Was it very underwhelming? Starting with the Jan versus Ulberg fight, what were your thoughts?
That was a disgusting fight.
Yeah.
Not that Ulberg, not that Jan Blachowicz was robbed, but I just think that he should have won the fight because both of them did nothing, and he was a bit more aggressive. His kicks and his strikes looked a bit more forceful, a bit more aggressive. And Ulberg, I don't know what his game plan was. I don't know if he just didn't want to go in and get caught, but even his leg kicks, they just seemed like they were just a bit light.
I reckon Jan definitely had more force. A lot of people online said they had it for Jan, and he probably deserved that win.
Look, I had it for Jan, but I'm also not disgusted that Ulberg won. Look,
You didn't do anything decisive.
yeah, it's like...
And to be honest, I think Ulberg's the UFC's boy in that division.
Yeah, it's like, he's the younger guy, that he's got more exciting fights that can be happening in the
Better
matchmakers
looking,
probably.
he's a bit more marketable.
Exactly. So, like, if you're going to leave it to the decision, leave it to the judges, beware that they might make a decision that's going to benefit the UFC.
Next thing you had Sean Brady versus Leon Edwards in the main event. Now, in the lead up to this, Leon Edwards was talking, that last fight I had, I wasn't myself. The timing really threw me off. Whatever it was, right? He gets into the octagon against Sean Brady, and the exact same thing happened. He got smothered. He looked good in the earlier rounds. I think he defended
Round one, he looked great.
He defended the takedown really well early on, and it just looked like a one-sided, wrestle fest after that. Sean Brady just smothered him and just got the finish. You could say he was better than Bilal because he ended up choking him out.
Look, he got the finish. That's where you could say maybe he was better than Bilal. But Leon Edwards, it's like a hit round two, and as soon as he got taken down pretty easily, it's just like, you know what? Tonight's not my night. I'm just gonna phone it in. And that's what happened. By round three, he got taken down again, and he actually almost like he took himself down. He tried to shoot a takedown on Sean Brady. Why would you do that, Leon? That doesn't make any sense. You're not a wrestler.
Online took to that and said this was the dumbest thing ever. It was like giving up. That was like your team throwing in the towel. You shooting for a takedown at that point. I mean, let's talk about that right now. Will we ever see Leon Edwards capture gold again in the UFC?
Look, he definitely can. If you look at his aesthetic, and he's actually he looks like a good fighter. He's got the capability of being a good fighter. He beat Kamaru Usman, who's one of the greatest welterweights of all time. He beat Colby Covington, another great welterweight in the history of that division. But it's just he can't first wrestlers. I don't know why.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think he's one of the worst champions that's been in the UFC next to the Sean Stricklands. In talking about championship reign, he's been great for the division. Had that longest reigning win streak in the division. He was, head kick Kamaru Usman, beat Kamaru Usman. The second fight. But I'm saying we have not seen that Leon. And I think his weakness is these bad matchups going against Bilal's, going against wrestlers like Sean Brady. And he's just not going to reach the pinnacle, the top of that division again. I just can't see it happening. And a lot of other fighters just said, look, he's just been found out. The game plan to beat him is now there. I can only see him going up against strikers in that division. He hasn't put out a statement on how he feels after that fight, but I just don't think he can go up against the best in that division.
Look, and that's where he probably is a victim of the circumstance. If JDM doesn't go on short notice to fight Bilal, then he probably faces JDM more of a beneficial.
Potentially beats JDM.
But in saying that, if you're a UFC fighter, a professional fighter, it doesn't matter who's in front of you. If you're part of that championship mentality, you have that kind of pedigree, you would go on and beat anyone in front of you. And that's the thing. People are calling out his mentality. Is he one of the most weak-minded people ever? Because if you have someone that was a former champion, then in his fight against Bilal, now in his fight against Sean Brady, just kind of giving up. And then even if you look at that first fight with Kamaru Usman, he looked dejected. He looked like he just was weak and didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Up until that head kick, it looked like he was one of the worst fighters ever.
Well, Sean Brady didn't like his demeanor after the fight. He said he went to go congratulate him, say, hey, thank you, you're a great champion. He said Leon was very salty, was not nice to deal with. So he said, you know what, fuck him. He went on Ariel Helwani and said, you know what,
he made sure to mention, like, it's all business. Like, I'm all business here. I don't
exactly
know why he didn't
right.
reciprocate.
But he said he took to Instagram and said, headshot dead. You don't even have guns in London. Like, it's fucking embarrassing. He goes, you know, I would have gone to sleep in Philly. You shouldn't have tapped out in your hometown. So he went in after him after the fight. Then you had Bilal Muhammad live tweeting the fight, which was probably one of the most entertaining parts of the fight. He goes, what time is it in London? Just asking for Leon. Don't let him bully your son.
Leon's still on 5 a.m. times and trying to tell him how shit he was fighting.
Then he's saying just how good is Bilal Muhammad because he made him look like a bum. Or Leon's going to need a big motivational speech in this round. And he was talking about the last round. You know, Sean copied my homework, he was saying.
But Bilal was having a field day during this fight because in the lead up to this fight as well, he's made sure to mention to Leon, look, you're not getting a title shot. You suck. You're not going to come near me. You're going to have to wait 2 to 3 years before you get a title shot. So Bilal was still a bit salty towards Leon in the build up to their fight as well.
Yeah.
And Bilal, after this fight, he's looking really good because he's the one that knocked out Sean Brady and Sean Brady just mopped the floor with Leon Edwards. So how good is Bilal?
I don't know what Leon does next from this. I'm assuming he tries to fight a ranked fighter. It's the first time he's been out of the pound-for-pound rankings in his division, right? Sorry, not the pound-for-pound ranking. No, yeah, out of the pound-for-pound rankings in the UFC. And I just don't see where he goes from here. I think he faces maybe a ranked 7, Ian Gary.
Look, the next fights that make sense, the most sense for Leon Edwards is either Ian Gary or Joaquin Buckley. 2 strikers, someone that's a favourable matchup for him, an entertaining fight. And if he does beat those guys, it kind of does catapult him back into that championship discussion. If he beats an Ian Gary or Joaquin Buckley, guys who are looking very good, have win streaks. Obviously, Ian Gary just lost. But in saying that, they do look good, and they're the next guys in that division.
It's coming off 2 losses will be hard. He has that beef with Ian Gary as well when they kicked him out of that. There was a Killcliff gym.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to verse Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary beats him at this point. Just on a stronger mentality.
And how he went against Shavkat. Like, again, it was a great showing. I think Ian's very well rounded. So it's probably in Leon's best interest if he goes on to just fight a striker or someone, in the division that he can get a W. He needs a W in the division. But let's move on. Let's move on to the UFC hot take of the week. The hot take for this week. The welterweight division has become the worst division in the UFC.
Yes, it has, because Bilal's your champion. JDM's fighting for the title. Shavkat's been absolutely just pulling out of fights versus nobodies. No one wants to fight him. Gilbert Burns has lost, someone from the old guard. Leon Edwards has lost. Colby Covington continues to lose. And Kamaru Usman has lost 3-fight losing streak.
And we haven't seen Kamaru Usman in about 2 years.
And he's nowhere to be seen. So the state of the welterweight division is like, it's just nobody wants to fight each other. There's no good fighters.
You've got Bilal Muhammad as champion, and there's just not a lot of buzz behind it. The announcers don't remember his name. The security guard don't know his champion. It's just there's not enough between a new crop of talent coming in and these guys that have been there for a while that haven't been making enough noise. And, to Ian Gary's credit, he wants to make noise. He's not the most liked guy in the division, but he was there. He took that fight on short notice against Shavkat. But it's just, there's just not enough going on. There's not enough stars in this division. There's not enough noise happening. And you look at someone like Colby Covington, who was the star, who was the bad guy of the division, and he's coming off 2 losses where he just wasn't looking great.
No, he looks terrible.
It's just what happened to the welterweight division? How does it get back to where it needs to be?
Well, firstly, I don't want to take a complete shit on the welterweight division because I do like Bilal. I thought Sean Brady was great as well. And I do think the flyweight division is probably worse. Like if you look at Pantoja, the way he's kind of dominated that division and that the fact that they weigh 50 kilos probably makes it worse.
Yeah.
But the way for the welterweight division to kind of get themselves back is they got to make good fights between strikers and then let Bilal defend the title multiple times a year. Whether he retains the title or loses it, there needs to be him versus Shavkat. Kamaru Usman needs to come back ASAP and fight someone like Joaquin Buckley or Ian Gary. then you need to have Leon Edwards fight another striker, not let him rest, and then, make people continue to think that these last 3 or 4 fights really mean he's a shit fighter. The guy didn't lose for like 8 years up until that first fight with Bilal.
There's still some entertaining fights to make. You got the prospect of Kamaru Usman coming back to the division. You've got, Colby Covington having his last few fights, calling out people like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, calling out,
Brothers.
the Diaz brothers, whatever it be, right? But there are some upcoming prospects. Like you said, Joaquin Buckley, ranked 6, had a great showing against Colby Covington, very dominant performance. Carlos Prates, upcoming fight, and one of the fighting nerds, one of the best staples in the UFC.
If he keeps knocking people out, that's interesting.
Yeah, Michael Morales as well. So I think these guys need time to really, show what they mean in the division, get the marketing up, give a reason for the fans to get behind you in this division.
And look, not every division can be like the lightweight division where you've just got, top 5 to 8 fighters that are all bangers. All the guys in the rankings are good fighters and they're all entertaining. Like, you're probably going to go through a lull period where you're changing from the old guard to the new guard. The same thing's kind of happening in the middleweight division. Like, they're pretty boring as well. But
okay, so if you had to say what's the best division right now in the UFC, what is it?
Lightweight division, far and away. Like, that's always been.
I would say yes, it's the most entertaining because you got Ilia coming up now. You got Islam. You got the best fighters. They're always entertaining fights. Justin Gaethje, Paddy Pimblett. You got some characters, right? But in talks of like healthy talent, and it's not just aging, I reckon it's got to be middleweight, right? You got. It's a mix of characters and great prospects. DDP, Sean Strickland, Khamzat Chimaev, who I think is the best UFC fighter in the world. Imavov, up-and-coming fighter.
The only problem with that division is a lot of them, like Imavov, Khamzat, even Kai Baralho, they're not American. You're always going to struggle when you don't have American fighters. And I think that's a big problem with why the UFC is kind of lacking that major star
and maybe
power.
why the lightweight diviion's so good.
It's because you got Dustin Poirier, you even got Justin Gaethje. Ilia Topuria speaks great English. Islam, to his credit, speaks great English and sells fights.
Fiziev was speaking English, and you know what? He did his job in promoting that fight.
Exactly. So I think the middleweight division, especially if Khamzat beats DDP, who's next? Khamzat's just going to beat everybody.
So, like we said, is welterweight the worst division, or is there a worse division?
I always think the flyweight division is always going to be the worst. Just like they
put on entertaining fights, but I will agree with you. I don't think welterweight is as bad as flyweight, and it hasn't been tossed around as much to say, can we cancel this division? When a division is being spoken about by Dana White, or it's been rumored hey, they might cancel and everyone move up to bantamweight, that's when you know it's probably one of the worst divisions. And that's not putting shit on Pantoja. He's one of the great champions, and he can probably move up and go on to do great things. But flyweight, in terms of talent and the way that they market themselves, isn't as good as probably welterweight.
And
let's be honest.
We're just focusing on the men here because if it was any division that we're going to cut, it'd probably be like women's strawweight.
Strawweight women,
yeah. Like any one of those would get cut first because flyweight's still more impressive than what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Now, headline was made last night. Ilia Topuria's new nickname, the legend, Ilia Topuria. It's no longer El Matador. It's La Leyenda.
La Leyenda, the legend. He's speaking it into existence. Now, he did tease last week that he was going to change his new nickname. It's very odd. I think usually people give them a nickname, but Ilia Topuria is crowning himself with his own nickname.
Well, look, the way he teased it was a bit out of the ordinary. He said, I'm going to be returning to the octagon with a new identity. And now everyone's going, what's this, Trans Topuria?
The Matadors served me well, but when I enter the octagon in my next time, it'll be a new nickname.
People were confused when he said, I'm coming in with a new identity, but I think we get it. And I like the reasoning for it. He says, I am a legend. I'm a legend in this sport. I've got street names after me now in Spain. I'm a legend in Spain. And people have to usually see to believe it. I believe it and then see it. And you know what? He thinks he's a legend, and he's a legend in the UFC. It's been in the space of a year from knocking out Volkanovski, knocking out Max Holloway, the first person to knock him down. The guy's a legend in the sport, and the legend is fitting.
Well, if you look at his resume, let's test if he's a legend, okay? Undefeated. That's already great. You're a legend. Knocking out Volkanovski, you're a legend. There's been like 4 featherweight champions in the history of the UFC. You're a legend. He's one of them. He knocked out Max Holloway, the first person to ever knock him down and knock him out.
Legend status.
You're a legend.
Yep.
Now he's going up to the lightweight division. If he achieves a 2-weight division champion status, You're a legend. What more do
Yeah.
you want him to do?
He's
The
trying to-
nickname is fitting.
He's speaking it into existence. The last time he did this, he put featherweight champion in his bio, and that seemed to work. People on Twitter saying, "Don't get ahead of yourself," but he loves getting ahead of himself, and he's the type of person to do it. I want to see him achieve great things. The guy's the most entertaining thing in the UFC right now. If he wants to call himself the legend, he can call himself the legend.
Okay, but like usually people say like, "Oh, Anderson Silva, he's the Spider." People crown him the nickname. When do people really give themselves their own nickname? I mean, like if you look at the NBA,
Yeah, but you tell Bruce Buffer, "Hey, I want to be called this."
yeah, but it's like
So-
usually it's like people called me this in my gym. People have called me this from when I was young. Like if you look at the NBA, they try to call Jason Tatum the anomaly, and people were like, "We're not calling him this. This is disgusting. This sucks."
Well, it's-
Ilia Topuria, just because he's cool, he can do this.
It's because of his resume. It's because what he's done. And it's his type of personality. He likes to manifest shit. That's his thing. I'm featherweight champion in my bio. I become featherweight
I'm just
champion.
saying, but it's like-
I am the legend. I'm La Leyenda. I'm the legend.
If Ian Gary said, "Can you guys please call me by this nickname?" Whether it be
People
like,
would hate it.
People would hate it. Like,
Yeah.
Ian Gary just doesn't have that
Yeah,
good
but
rapport
Ian
with
Gary
the
didn't
fans.
knock out Max Holloway. This guy, he has a resume of talking shit and then getting it done. And the fans would used to boo him and say, "Guys, I'm sorry, no one. Max Holloway hasn't experienced my power." And he went out and he did it. So when he can talk shit like that and back it up, he can call himself the legend.
I definitely thought he was going to call himself the Conquistador or something
Yeah,
like that.
El
Something-
Conquistador.
I was reading the rumors online, but the La Leyenda.
I like it.
La Leyenda.
Yeah.
So Bruce Buffer's going to have to say Ilia La Leyenda Topuria.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I like
exactly
it.
right. Well, he's been going back and forth with Charles Oliveira. Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira have been going back and forth on Twitter. There's a bit of beef here because Ilia Topuria is coming into this division and he's staking his claim. I want a title shot. Charles Oliveira does not want this. Okay, he's saying, you know what, Ilia's got to earn this title shot.
Which
He's
I
got to
agree
come
with.
in, he's got to be champion, and then I would face him. Ilia Topuria's response was pretty hilarious. Ilia says, "Charles, it's better if you stay quiet. You have 10 losses, 5 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 1 by decision. You are the contender, while I am the champion. I'm the father of the entire division. I haven't come here to ask for anything. Here, I am the one in charge." This
Laying
guy
down the law.
he sounds like a legend.
He's laying down the law. Look, when you talk like that, very commanding, very
Yeah.
aggressive, and you can do that because you have knocked out Max Holloway. And Max Holloway has knocked out Justin Gaethje, who's
Who's
a
in
title
that- in-
contender in
in
the
that
lightweight
division.
division. So Ilia Topuria does have a lot to say. And Charles Oliveira, while I do agree with him, like it's very hard for Ilia to leapfrog Charles, to leapfrog Arman Sarukian, even Justin Gaethje. It is hard for them to make that argument. But if that's the fight to make, if that's the money fight, Charles, you got nothing to do. And if Charles really has a problem with it, and you think you're that good, just face each other. Agree to the fight with Ilia Topuria because he's happy to do so.
Well, Charles begs to differ. He says, "Listen, I don't need to fight him. You know, Dana, I want to fight International Fight Week. Islam wants to fight International Fight Week. Let's make it happen." And look, while Charles Oliveira deserves it, he says he wants to be champion again. I still think he needs to face Arman Sarukian one more time as a title contender before he goes and faces a champion.
No. Look, Charles, because he was a champion, because he did pull out of the rematch on short notice with the cut above his eye, I still think he does deserve a rematch. He made easy work of Michael Chandler. Yes, that 5th round was a bit, how you going? But still, rounds 1 to 4, he killed him. And besides Arman Sarukian, that loss, which was a very tight one, could have gone either way. And look, if he wants to fight International Fight Week and Islam Makhachev has agreed to it, why not make the fight?
Okay,
Like,
what
it's a
about
good fight
this?
to
If
make
you're
for
the
International
UFC,
Fight
if
Week.
you're the UFC, Islam doesn't want to fight Ilia Topuria. Do you just make Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira?
Yes. Like if
Is
Islam-
that a great intro fight for Ilia in the lightweight division?
it's like the perfect fight because it's someone that if you do beat him, okay, you know what, you do deserve a title
He's
shot.
well established.
You're
Give
well
him Islam
established.
next.
Like,
Yeah.
But I could also see Ilia just going straight for the title. Like all of it makes sense. It's literally whatever Dana and Hunter can get other fighters to agree to. Because Ilia, it just seems like he doesn't want to cut weight back to featherweight. So whoever can agree to fight him at lightweight, he'll take the fight.
Well, this is how you wrap this segment up. Everyone wants a title shot in that division. Arman Sarukian says, "Got news coming soon. I want a title shot."
No.
Hang on. Justin Gaethje says he wants a title shot after beating Fiziev. Ilia Topuria wants a title shot. And Charles Charles Oliveira wants a title shot. So something's got to give. Someone's got to have a title eliminator fight and someone's got to fight for the title because Islam just won in 1 round. The guy's fresh. He's ready to go international fight week.
To be fair to Arman Sarukian, he's kind of accepted that he's not going to get a title shot next.
Because he pulled out.
Because he pulled out early, he's got to, eat shit from Dana for a bit
Yeah.
and take a fight before he goes for the title again, which he's confident in doing. And I hope it's Dan Hooker because if they've spoken enough shit about each other, just make it happen.
That kind of makes sense, and I'd like to see that happen. It's a fight to make, maybe international fight week as well, depending when Dan Hooker's
his hand's
hand gets recovered. But I want to talk about UFC Canada. UFC 315 is taking place in Canada.
Montreal.
Now, Joe Rogan has come out controversially and says, I'm not going to Canada. I'm not going to be doing the commentary in Canada. I would rather much go to Russia instead.
Okay, firstly, it's not that controversial because Joe Rogan, as part of his travel schedule, doesn't travel to international fight events, whether it's Abu Dhabi, London, Manchester. He doesn't leave America.
He's been doing just the Las Vegas, the US cards.
He does all the US cards. So when the question was brought about, will you go to Canada?
He goes, I don't go to Canada anymore.
It makes sense for him not to go to Canada because it's outside the US, even though Montreal is like traveling to a US city.
I'll quote him. I don't go to Canada anymore. I don't. I'd rather go to Russia.
And that's where it becomes controversial because not only did you could have just said, Joe, look, I don't travel to international events. I'm happy to stay in America. But he says, no, I hate Canada. I'd rather go to Russia than travel to this shithole.
Listen, not many people from America are big fans of Canada.
There's a rivalry there.
They don't like Justin Trudeau. Everyone in Canada has been booing the national anthem very recently. I don't know if you've been seeing that. Donald Trump wants to make Canada the 51st state. If it was the 51st state, Joe Rogan would go into commentary there if they didn't buy it.
Because that's part of America now.
They would go and buy Canada. But I'm telling you, not a lot of Americans like Canada, and I think the world's not liking Canada. It's a very soft, soy boy type of place. You got Justin Trudeau there.
Careful, we got to try and get into the country.
No, we'll be going there. But even just from a content standpoint, a lot of the people that do interviews there, people that work with the UFC there, apparently the government is very intrusive on the type of content that goes out, especially when you got guys like Sean Strickland that have to go fight there. The government has been very and the media over there has been very critical of fighters that have been there. So Joe Rogan says, fuck it, I'm not going to go there. And I don't blame him. That's probably where we are right now.
Where I agree with Joe is I've been to Canada, not my favorite place. I've never been to Russia. So I think I too would rather go to Russia.
You know what I'll say? Joe Rogan would say the same thing about Australia. With how we had lockdowns, with how critical the media was of Sean Strickland and how everyone and the governments carry on about fighters coming in here, I think he would say the same thing about Australia. He says, you know what? I don't want to go to Canada, and that's fine. You don't have to.
But Canada, the Canadian people, you got a big question on your mind. Do you want Joe Rogan and the UFC to come to Canada? If you are really a big fan of Joe Rogan and you want him to come to Canada,
you know what it is? There's a difference. UFC fans want Joe Rogan and the UFC to come to Canada. I don't know if
the wider
Canadian, whoever's there, whether it's the migrants that are there or these, the Canadian people there. I don't know if they want the UFC.
I think Canada just called a snap election, and whether they have it on the agenda or not, whether they want to become a state of America.
Yeah.
I think some UFC fans might influence the vote. Look, hey, I want Joe Rogan to come to the country. Let's maybe join America in this election.
It was the same thing with in Australia. It was all these soft cocks. Why are we bringing out the UFC? Why can't we put more money into the ballet and the fine arts? It's
who's letting Sean Strickland talk?
Yeah. Why are we letting all these media having meltdowns of it's still a horrendous sport. It's people want it. People enjoy it. It is a new form of boxing. It is combat sports. And the UFC fans in Canada want it. I just don't know if the wider Canadian community want it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, now, speaking of another controversial figure, Conor McGregor.
Yes.
Who's now outlined that he wants to run for president in Ireland. Do you see this happening?
This will be one of the most entertaining political runs since Donald Trump's first one in 2015. And you know why? Donald Trump was on the stage and he was saying, I don't need their money. I'm doing this for the people. I'm doing this for you. I don't need special interest groups. And that's Conor McGregor. He doesn't need the money. The guy's almost a billionaire. He's got proper 12. He's got his Irish whiskey label. He's got his music label. The guy's 100 millionaire over. He's fought Floyd Mayweather. He doesn't need the money, but he's saying, I want to do this. and it's going to be very entertaining. The guy can talk with the best of them.
Well, that's why when you bring up Trump's original run, you got him on stage talking to politicians. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
Yeah.
He's having goes at people's weight, their looks.
And he was saying, he was like, there was a lot of subject matter I could have gone at your looks and I didn't.
Exactly. Similar to how Conor
Conor
McGregor
just
I could have
did-
taken a jab. I could have taken many jabs, but I decided not to. So imagine Conor McGregor on the stage with some nerds, some politicians, just sounding off the way he does at UFC fighters. Because if you've got the balls to badmouth a UFC fighter, the baddest fighters in the world, imagine what you could get away with saying to a politician.
Yeah.
Just imagine Conor McGregor.
Imagine prime UFC press conference Conor McGregor sounding off on an Irish politician, like telling him, you'll do fucking nothing.
Shut your fucking mouth.
You do fucking nothing for the Irish people.
Imagine Conor McGregor sitting at a UN Assembly meeting as Irish president, just screaming out, "Who the fuck is that guy?"
That
just
would
to
be
a
very funny.
random, I don't know, wherever country he's from.
Yeah.
He could just rinse some people. For the pure entertainment factor,
I wanna see it
this to
happen.
I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
see it happen because it would be great, and I think maybe the Irish people want it. I don't know.
Look, there's two different things: what you see online and what Irish people actually want. Apparently, people online want to see it happen. These Irish people, they say it's going to be very entertaining. Twitter's abuzz with him doing it. He's got the cosign of Donald Trump, who let him address the media room and let him come visit the White House on St. Paddy's Day. He's had a lot of choice words to say about the current Irish president. So, look, will I say I want to see it happen? Yes, for our entertainment value. It would be great for content. So let's make it happen. I want to see Conor McGregor run for Irish president.
But look, let's be honest here. A former fighter trying to run in politics.
Hey,
the only example,
Manny Pacquiao's done it.
So the only example I can see of another fighter doing that was Manny Pacquiao. But even he was unsuccessful in his bid to become president. I think he became senator or governor or something like that.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He was only governor of California.
Yeah, okay.
So it's very hard to get the top job. It's very hard.
Listen,
Even
a
Manny
lot
doesn't-
of actors and personalities get into politics. It's Zelensky. He comes to the White House begging for
Comedian.
money.
He was a
He
comedian.
used to be a comedian. You had Reagan,
Yeah,
actor.
yeah, he was a big actor. I think the clip's gone viral of him slapping all
Yeah, yeah.
in a
So-
movie. In a movie. But I'm saying Manny Pacquiao.
Klitschko was again. He's run for office in the Ukraine as
But
well.
like Manny Pacquiao is probably the most likable person ever. So harmless, doesn't harm a fly. Even he couldn't become president. So Conor McGregor, with everything that's going on in his life, whether it be even just going back to throwing a chair at a bus, it's very hard to become president after that.
Yeah, no, again, if he can follow suit, I think it's going to be one of the most entertaining things and probably great for Irish politics. There's just, that's what I was saying, there's probably a difference between what Irish Americans think and what the people of Ireland think.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where they think there might be a bit of a divide and who actually, because there's footage of McGregor online getting booed at concerts, you know what I mean? But
That's
he's
fake.
loved in America.
That's CGI.
Yeah, I would like to see it happen, you know what? And I dare to say I'd vote for Conor McGregor.
Okay, but also this weekend, another big UFC fight night, Usyk versus Moreno in Mexico City.
Yes.
What's a quick fight prediction?
Look, fight prediction. I'm going based off my heart here. We interviewed Steve Usyk. He's very confident. He's a guy that studies game plans. Moreno's got a lot of tape on him. And there's a game plan to beat Moreno. And the only time we've seen really Usyk lose is when he got caught by Kairouz France. He got caught in that fight.
Yeah.
He wasn't pleased with the outcome. The guy took Pantoja, and I will say he was the biggest test for Pantoja in the division. On the back of that, I'm going Steve Usyk to win by decision.
It's always hard once you interview someone and they kind of give you an insight into their camp, insight into their preparation. So on the back of that great interview, I'm going to take Steve Usyk because I do want him to win. It's better for Aussies. And I do think even going into the Kairouz France fight, if you looked at the odds, if you looked at the way people saw the fight going, people thought Steve Usyk was going to win.
Yeah.
They say the way he trains, his preparation, and the way he fights.
meticulous.
He's very good, and he's a good fighter, and he's a future of the division. So on the back of that, I'm going to take Steve Usyk. He went to Mexico City like a month or month and a half before his
Acclimatized
fight.
himself.
He wants to prepare himself the best he can for this fight, and I think he's going to win the fight.
And that's not to take anything away from Moreno. Guy's a great fighter. Again, has been one of the best in the division for a long time. Again, up there with Roy Val as contenders. I just think Usyk is the better prospect. And I think, like you said, you just weigh up how each fighter competed against Alexandre Pantoja. And I'm just leaning towards Usyk. I think he gets it done.
Come on, Usyk, get it done. Come on.
Yeah,
Just
we need it for the Aussies.
Like, if we can have a good rally of Usyk beating Moreno, then Volkanovski beating Diego
and
Lopez.
JDM beating Bilal.
Like, all of a
3
sudden-
Aussie champions within the space of a
Nah,
month.
not 3 Aussie, 2 Aussie champions, maybe Usyk going for another title. But that would be great.
True, sorry, I apologise. Yeah,
But we could, you never know, because he could go for a title, and then Ulberg could go for a title. But it's like, it does create a buzz in Australia. Maybe brings more events out here, which is all I want.
2 Aussie champions and contenders in the space of 2 months, you'll take it.
Exactly.
You'll
So,
take it.
I mean, maybe Dana's just trying to do everyone down here a favour, but I don't know why he'd want to, because he always takes a shit on it.
Now, let's move over to the world of boxing. It was announced that TKO Group have their pay structure for these TKO boxers. It's not looking very
I
good.
think the boxers were hoping that was fake.
Some of the boxers were hoping for a bit more of a payday, but they're saying they're going to pay the top of the line boxers in the TKO Boxing League 750 grand.
I think it was even worse if you go to the bottom end of it, where it's just if you're an unranked fighter, it'll give you a bag of chips if you come and fight. So it was tough. It's not what you'd expect of the Saudi hospitality, the Saudi investment fund money. But look, it's still early. And, if they're giving you opportunities, that's probably more
And
important.
this is all in line with Dana White potentially teasing that he might be handing over the reins of the UFC sometime pretty soon.
Well, they're trying
He's
to get
saying
rid
he's
of
got
him.
a lot going on with Power Slap and obviously this TKO boxing. And he said, listen, will you relinquish any control? And he said, you know what? You'll be hearing about that pretty soon. So
Jeez.
could you see a world where it's the UFC without Dana White? And it's
can.
probably Hunter Campbell running the show.
I can, because it's not like he's more of a figurehead, if at best now. Like, that's all he does. He's kind of just be a spokesperson. He's not really, I don't think he's doing too much matchmaking. I don't think he's doing too much behind the scenes work anymore. And that's because he doesn't have to.
And it shows, like, with this boxing pay leak of what they plan to pay the TKO boxers, I think he's going to show a lot more urgency and he'll have a lot more control over this TKO boxing league and he'll treat that as his new UFC project.
And you got to look, the WWE is surviving without Vince McMahon, something I never envisioned or thought would happen. So, like, there's always people that can step up and do a better job or do as good of a job. So I think Dana White, it's not that it would be good, because it's like you're at your peak right now with Dana White as part of the UFC, but someone can come in and do as good of a job.
And then leading off that, Ryan Garcia, who is facing Rolly Romero in May in Times Square, was asked, would you face Jake Paul? Because Jake Paul, I don't know if you know, he had signed on the dotted line to face Canelo. So some serious boxers want to face Jake Paul. Garcia was asked, would you face him? He said, why not? Of course I would.
Well, he said that, look, him and Jake Paul were friends up until, Logan Paul tried to sue Ryan Garcia after his comments about Prime. And he said, look, of course I would give up the weight. There's value in this fight. We're going to make a bunch of money. He obviously thinks he's going to win. But again, this is what I see, that he's not as good as he thinks he is in his head.
I think it's definitely a fight to make. When you're talking about social media boxing, Ryan Garcia, as good as he is, a guy that knocked down Devin Haney multiple times and beat him. I didn't care if he had anything in his system. The guy was drinking beers the week before, right? The guy's a great fighter and he's socially relevant. The guy's got over 7 million followers on Instagram. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys that was a social media boxer, was a guy that was famous on social media before he was known to be that guy in boxing. So it's definitely a fight to make, and it puts Jake Paul to the test if he can go with a legit boxer.
Well, that's the thing, but how much weight will he give up? Because, look, he goes, because of the weight difference, I might not get him early. I might have to wait a bit for the later rounds. But he said he's happy to give up weight. It's like, is he going to be like a heavyweight versus a featherweight? Like, how is this going to work? Or a heavyweight versus a middleweight? Like,
I think they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. I mean, Jake Paul went up to heavyweight and fought Mike Tyson.
but I'm saying, if he's got 20 kilos on him, like, you might be a good boxer, Ryan Garcia, but it's a lot of weight to give up.
I think they cut down to a good, like lightweight fight that they could do not a cruiserweight bout.
But Jake Paul's going to be heavier. He's going to allow him to be heavier.
Yeah.
I don't know if people can even sanction that fight, but it's got to be maybe an exhibition.
Nah, I think they meet somewhere at a good weight division and they make that happen. I'd want to see that happen. But again, we want to thank you guys for staying tuned. Okay, we've got big week coming up. UFC 314 coming up in Miami. We will be on the ground. Tim Tszyu coming up. He's finally coming back to Australia after 2 losses.
In Tszyu Castle.
It's the road to redemption for Tim Tszyu, and it's his way back to America. So we'll be covering that next week. And stay tuned for UFC Miami. Everything's happening this week. Let's hope Usyk gets a W over in Mexico City. That's all we have time for. Make sure you subscribe to @Kairouz Bros on YouTube and @JohnBernardK on Instagram and TikTok for all the clips. That is all we have time for today. Back to you in the studio, Ryan.